Good morning. Welcome to the Assembly Committee on Government Affairs meeting for the 2025 legislative session. Will the Secretary please call the roll?
Assembly members Carter.
Present.
DeLong.
Present.
De Silva.
Here.
Edgeworth.
Present.
Flanagan.
Present.
Gallant.
Here.
Goulding.
Here.
Gurr.
Here.
Hunt.
Here.
Jackson.
Here.
Karras.
Here.
Kasama. Nguyen.
Here.
And Chair Considine.
Present, and please mark Assemblymember Kasama as present when they arrive. Welcome to the audience in Carson City, those joining by video conference in Las Vegas, and those listening over the internet. Let's go to housekeeping. First, please silence your electronic devices. If you wish to testify, please sign in at the table by the door and provide a business card to the committee secretary. When testifying, please turn on the microphone and clearly state your name and any affiliation for the record. Turn the microphone off each time you are done speaking. If you are providing handouts, please ensure that hard copies are available for members of the public. Electronic copies should have been submitted to our committee manager by 9 a.m. yesterday. We expect courtesy and respect in our interactions during the meetings, even if we disagree with someone else's opinion or position. I encourage committee members to ask questions and engage with the material presented. If you have any follow-up questions, please flag them for me so we can ensure we balance our time effectively during the meetings. Committee members will be using their laptops to view handouts and other documents. Please do not interpret this as a sign of disrespect or inattention. With that, let's get started. Please come on up to the table and get started when you're ready.
Good morning, Chair Considine. It's great to see everybody. My name is Aaron Ford, and I am your Attorney General. Delighted to be here with my colleagues. To my left is my Chief of Staff, Teresa Benitez Thompson, and to my right is my colleague, Mike Morton, and we are here to present a quick overview of the Office of Attorney General. So thanks again, everybody, for having us. I am thankful to be to the people of Nevada for granting me an additional 4 years to serve as their Attorney General. I do not take lightly the continued trust that Nevadans have granted me to ensure that there are public safety and to continue seeking justice for all. Today, I will introduce you to the Office of Attorney General. We have been allotted 15 minutes for today's presentations, and so I will be succinct and focus on office highlights. I remain resolute in my leadership and governance over the Office of Attorney General with its 155 driven attorneys, 62 dedicated investigators, and 200 outstanding support staff across 23 divisions, enforcing the breadth of Nevada law. We are united under a common belief, and if you were to ask anyone in my office, they would tell you that our job is justice. As the state's chief law enforcement officer, the Attorney General represents the people of Nevada. We represent the people's best interest before state and federal trial, the appellate courts in criminal and civil matters. We also serve as legal counsel for state officers, state departments, and most state boards and commissions. Additionally, my office works with our local, state, and federal law enforcement partners to protect the public. I invite you all to read our 2022-2024 biennial report, which can be found at our website, which is ag.nv.gov. Every Attorney General brings their own perspective as to how to protect and improve the lives of Nevadans. The overarching theme I have used to set the intention of our office is the motto, "Our job is justice." To guide my decision-making, I have framed my administration by a set of policy priorities. These priorities do not override our statutory obligations. Rather, they serve as a lens through which we view our work. I refer to these priorities as the 5 C's: client services, consumer protection, constitutional and civil rights, criminal justice and reform, and community engagement and service. Each of these C's serves as the moral compass to guide the ways in which our office can serve Nevada. Since we are here before the Committee on Government Affairs, I will start with my office's work for our clients. I require my administration to operate with a customer service mindset. I'm mindful that our clients, the executive branch agencies, are subject matter experts, and the Office of Attorney General is there to assist them in lawful execution of their respective statutes, and when required, prosecutions of those laws and collections of fines. For example, the Office of Attorney General provided thousands of hours of counsel to executive branch agencies, which include many issues related to the open meetings law. Our Medicaid Fraud Control Unit obtained judgments in criminal and civil cases totaling over $13 million. That's in our annual report, page 22. This money is returned to the Medicaid system for use in providing medical services to impoverished Nevadans. Additionally, our MFCU obtained 38 convictions and an additional 17 civil settlements between 2022 and 2024. In notable victories, Sullivan versus Nicking County Water District, a landmark water rights case, we successfully defended the state engineer's authority under Nevada statute to combine multiple groundwater basins into one based on a shared source of water. On to consumer protection. I always stand up against corporations who engage in deceptive trade practices and anti-competitive measures which harm Nevadans' hardworking families. Some highlights over the past 2 years include providing advocacy for ratepayers before the Public Utilities Commission and the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission to ensure that ratepayers receive reliable utility services at a reasonable cost. We've enforced the Deceptive Trade Practices Act. For example, I obtained a $2 million settlement with Walmart to ensure prices listed on the shelf matched prices being charged at the checkout counter. That's an important settlement because we got that complaint right from here in Washoe County. A Walmart in Washoe County was violating our act, and we were able to pursue that and obtain justice in that regard. As chairman of the Attorney General Alliance, I launched the Empowering Consumers Through Education initiative, a comprehensive strategy addressing consumer protection by focusing on the evolving challenges faced by consumers in today's complex landscape. I continue to hold the pharmaceutical industry accountable for the devastating harms that opioids have caused across Nevada's communities. I'm proud to say that we now stand over $1.2 billion with a B in recoveries that will be coming in over the next 20 years. Transparency of these dollars is paramount to me, and this past year, my office worked with the Department of Health and Human Services to produce a data dashboard so members of the public, anybody, can track the flow of these dollars. Lastly, non-opioid settlements from the past biennium totaled over $28 million. Again, this is money that's flowing back into the Nevadans who have been wrongly treated under our Deceptive Trade Practices Act and other statutes. Moving to constitutional and civil rights. Protecting your constitutional rights remains paramount to me and for my administration. Upholding democracy and protecting access to fair and free elections is a keystone of my administration. To this end, we prosecute felony voter fraud cases in Nevada, and we defend against attacks to interrupt procedural ballot counting. There are 2 recent actions that I actually want to discuss with you. They've been in the headlines, and I think it's only fair for us to mention them. First, I joined with 17 other states. Actually, there are more than 2, but I'll touch on these 2 here. There are 17 other states and I who challenged President Donald Trump's executive order purporting to end birthright citizenship, an action that violates the constitutional rights to which all people born in the United States are entitled. And just a quick primer on why that's such an important notion. The 14th Amendment indicates in its text that if you are born here, you are a citizen of the United States. The reason why I find that quite an important amendment is because the initial conversation around this in our country arose right after slavery, during slavery, frankly, in 1850s, when the Dred Scott case was decided, where children of African descendants who had been enslaved, who were enslaved in our country, were denied the right to be citizens of this country. And in fact, our Supreme Court said that black children could never be citizens of this country. In fact, our Supreme Court said, and I quote, "There are no rights that the black man has that the white man is bound to respect." That's our Supreme Court. It took the fighting of the Civil War and the passage of the 14th Amendment to provide that African descendants of those who were enslaved here would be allowed to be citizens of this country. A few years later, a few decades, there was a Chinese immigrant, a Chinese American who was born on these shores in San Francisco. His parents were also not allowed to be considered citizens of this country, but he was born here. And the question was whether he could be considered a citizen. He took it to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said that the 14th Amendment is clear. If you are born here, you are a citizen, irrespective of your parents' citizenry. And so at the end of the day, we are faced with an executive order, ours within the current administration, that attempted to deprive by fiat those under the 14th Amendment who were allowed this citizenship. My office went to court within 6 hours after that executive order came out, and we prevailed in a temporary restraining order just recently and a preliminary injunction just recently. And so I wanted to highlight that one as one of the ways in which my office would protect constitutional rights, irrespective of who's in power. Secondly, I joined a coalition of states to request a temporary restraining order to prevent the Federal Office of Management and Budget, OMB is what it's called, from enacting an indefinite pause on federal assistance. A few weeks ago, I, with my colleague and a few others, took a rural tour headed to Elko for cowboy poetry. We stopped in Fernley, Fallon, Winnemucca, Elko, and other places, Lovelock, and met with recipients of those who receive grants from our office. We oversee tens of millions of dollars of grants in our office that go out to recipients of to organizations that provide services for domestic violence survivors, sexual assault survivors, and several others. And to a person, with the exception of maybe a couple, they were quite concerned that those funds would have dried up their ability to serve their residents and their constituents in those particular rural areas. I'm proud that this litigation that we engaged in stopped that freeze in its tracks. We have, to be sure, have had to go back to court to enforce the order, but our coalition of folks have jumped to action to ensure that the constitutional separation of powers doctrine was upheld in that particular arena as well. So I wanted to highlight those. There are a few other cases you may have questions about, and I'd be happy to entertain questions about those if the chairwoman, if the chair member would prefer. Moving on to criminal justice and reform, it has been a priority of mine for this office for the past 6 years. Ensuring public safety and reform are not competing values, however. They are not mutually exclusive. In fact, I believe in accountability for those who harm others, as well as a justice system that's comprised of human dignity and fairness. I'm proud to say that my staff and I have successfully prosecuted dangerous criminals, ensuring a safer Nevada for all. Between 2022 and 2024, the investigations division of my office received more than 8,000 complaints concerning cybercrime, cyber fraud, human trafficking, missing children, and public integrity concerns. Many of those reviews turned into active investigations and subsequent prosecutions. AG investigators also participated in Southern Nevada Human Trafficking Task Force operations with the FBI, U.S. Attorney's Office, and local law enforcement agencies. OAG investigators tackled deceptive fraud in the Latino community through investigations into notario operators, persons who pass themselves off as attorneys and defraud their victims of significant financial sums by promising to help them in acquiring permanent residence or other immigration benefits. This past biennium, we established the Victim Services Unit. The 82nd Legislature, thank you so much, granted our request for 2 victims witness advocates, with their mission being to provide support, advocacy, and empowerment for victims and survivors and the witnesses of crimes investigated and prosecuted by the Office of Attorney General. Additionally, we prosecute financial fraud, including scams, insurance fraud, workers' compensation fraud, securities fraud, mortgage fraud, sex trafficking, cyber crimes, public integrity cases, and crimes that occur in the Department of Corrections facilities. Now on to the last C, community engagement. Our Constituent Services Unit received thousands of communications between calls, letters, and emails from concerned Nevada residents. Some residents called to express their views. Others called to file complaints or to request investigations into fraudulent business dealings. Over the biennium, there were more than 16,000 constituent services requests made to our office. During the past biennium, our Office of Military Legal Assistance, OMLA as we call it, provided support to over 1,900 veterans and military spouses. The OMLA maintains a monthly Ask a Lawyer event at the North Las Vegas Medical Center to provide free, no appointment necessary legal consultations. My investigations decision and I hosted the first ever OAG-sponsored Community Cadet Academy at the Richard Steele Boxing Gym in Southern Nevada. Approximately 50 kids participated, and additionally, our investigators and their families participated in an Earth Day cleanup event at the Valley of Fire State Park, as well as investigators and support staff in Northern Nevada participating in the Carson City Sheriff's Night Out. My staff continues their ongoing involvement in the Police Athletic League of Southern Nevada, food distribution events as well, a community service event in which free food is handed out in places throughout Nevada, and the food in that instance is provided by 3 Square. We're happy to be partners with them. And at this time, I want to thank our law enforcement officers for their continued community involvement and the work that they engage in daily to make sure our communities are safer. Lastly, the Office of Attorney General supports local nonprofit organizations such as local law enforcement agencies and state-specific endeavors through $13 million of grants and state projects. Moving past the 5 Cs, I want to highlight programs that are housed within the Office of Attorney General. The Domestic Violence Ombudsman, who serves as the liaison with all state and local partners on issues related to domestic violence, sexual assault, and human trafficking, is located in my office. She also serves as the state-level coordinator with oversight of many programs and initiatives, including the statewide Committee on Domestic Violence and the Nevada VINE program. The Office of Military Legal Assistance, I mentioned, provides pro bono legal advice for veterans and military families in civil matters. That's a leftover program that was a very successful one that my predecessors, Adam Laxalt, instituted, and we have kept that, and it has been very successful and, in fact, copied by other states across the country. So kudos to Mr. Laxalt for coming up with that idea. Our grants unit manages federal awards and grants to law enforcement agencies and community organizations engaged in supporting victims of domestic violence and assault. The Office of Attorney General also provides staff support to the Nevada Prosecutors Advisory Council, the mission of which is to, among other things, provide communication, training, and foster competency among the prosecutors of the state of Nevada. So please reach out to me if you'd like to know anything further about those offices. And finally, for the committee's awareness, I'm providing a list of legislation that will most likely be heard at some point by hopefully a committee within this building. So look, this concludes my overview, and I stand ready to answer any questions. Thank you so much for having me, Chairperson.
Thank you so much for the presentation. Thank you for attending this morning. Committee members, do we have any questions? I'd like to start with Assembly Member De Silva.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Mr. Attorney General, for being here before us and team, and for your great presentation, very informative. First and foremost, I'd like to firstly, thank you really, as an immigrant, as somebody who was formerly undocumented, for the work that you've done in our communities, personally showing up to the meetings we've been hosting, all over the city. So thank you for that, and thank you for the sort of focus that you brought to communities oftentimes who don't get the attention from folks at the highest levels of our government. Secondly, I do want to talk about the notarios. I know that's a big issue, especially in my district. And I just wanted to see if you could maybe give us an update as to how the work has been going to make sure those sort of folks are defrauding, by the tens of thousands of dollars of hardworking folks in our communities, especially in the east and the north. How that work has been going through the office. Thank you.
Sir, thank you, Assembly Member De Silva. And if I could respond to your initial comment. Thank you for acknowledging that. Look, I've said this before, and I'll say it again. I am unabashed in what my job is in this office, and that is to represent the entirety of the Nevada family, everybody who lives here. If you are a resident in this state, I'm your Attorney General, period, point blank. And I talk about the protection of constitutional rights. Understand this: every person present in this country has constitutional rights. Every person, citizens, and yes, undocumented folks. And it is my job as Attorney General to ensure that the Constitution is utilized to protect and defend everyone who has those rights. And if they are abridged, I will spring to action, period, point blank. And so it is certainly my honor, Assembly Member, to show up in immigrant communities and discuss things that are of import to them. You are my constituents as well, whether you can vote for me or not. That includes children. That includes immigrants. You are my constituents, and it's my job. And so it is my pleasure to show up. And thank you for acknowledging that. Relative to your question about notarios, we have very active operations, sting operations. We have community engagement through my investigators. I couldn't right now put a number to how much we've been able to serve. We can probably look that up and circle back to you and provide it to the chairperson for distribution to the committee. But we stay very active in that regard. The notario issue is interesting that you would say, because it is, generally speaking, considered to be one in the Latino community more prevalent than anywhere else. But we have Little Ethiopia, for example, where that has also been an issue in Southern Nevada, and I've shown up to assist in that regard. And so to the extent there are problems that you see happening in this area, please reach out to our office. You can reach out directly to me, and we can ensure that we pass information off to our investigators and we can look into it. But we stay very active. In fact, I just did a commercial en español con la Consulada de Mexico, with the Mexican consul in Spanish, talking about, in addition to notario fraud, other things, but we did a commercial about notario fraud and the resources that are available to the community, both through my office and through the Mexican consulate. So we'll stay active in that regard, and thank you so much for the question.
Thank you so much, Assemblymember De Silva. I do have a couple of questions. One of them, you mentioned the Ombudsman's office. I often get calls from constituents not aware that there are multiple offices or of a ombudsman. I don't know if they're all, if you could list them all, but if you could list how many different offices there are, and if you can't off the top of your head, I understand. If you could send that, that would be great.
Thank you, Chairperson. So the Ombudsman office that I was referring to was the Ombudsman in the domestic violence arena. I don't think we have another Ombudsman in our office. There may be elsewhere in other divisions. I think the real estate division has one. But in my office, it's the Ombudsman who deals with domestic violence and sexual assault.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that, Attorney General. My next question is, you mentioned, open meeting law. It's usually a very confusing area, and I was wondering if you just could take just a few minutes or someone to discuss a quick overview of the open meeting law, and please state your name for the record.
My apologies. Aaron Ford for the record. So my office's engagement in the open meeting law arena is to serve as counsel for public agencies that are subject to open meetings law. There are rules and requirements relative to what has to happen in the open, so to speak, like in terms of members that you can't talk behind the scenes, you can't do certain rules, you can't do certain actions that violate the open meetings law. And so my office has lawyers who sit as counsel for all of the administrative agencies. You guys aren't subject to open meeting law, and so I wouldn't be surprised if many of you would be familiar with some of the terms. But the public agencies, such as the Board of Examiners upon which I sit, for example, we have a lawyer who sits there to advise us to ensure that we are following the rules in that regard. But we also receive complaints on open meeting law violations from the different entities and agencies, whether they're school boards or cities council or county commissions. And we analyze those complaints and we render decisions on whether the rules have been violated relative to open meeting law issues. And so we have, in fact, a bill this year that we're running. We run one every year. It's a bill that is a compilation of thoughts from a large working group that comes together, whether they be from, again, municipalities or the press, to talk about ways in which we can improve the open meeting law process and what the statute requires in that regard. So that's the extent that we operate, both as counsel but also as adjudicators of violations of open meeting law violations.
Thank you very much for that. Our next question is from Assemblymember Jackson.
Good morning, AG. Always good to see you. And, thank you for always being accessible. I know you mentioned about those who are born here that possibly may lose their citizenship because of our current president. Is there anything in our state constitution that declares what's a citizenship? What's a citizen?
Thank you, Assemblymember Jackson. I want to be clear, I wasn't suggesting that people born here would lose citizenship. The executive order, as it was written, was to go into effect 30 days after it was issued, and it was to apply prospectively. So we would have had thousands of babies in Nevada who were born starting around February 20th, who would, if they were born to parents who were undocumented, who would not have the benefit of citizenship. It was a prospective thing. And in terms of what our Constitution says in that regard, the citizenship clause for the federal government also applies to residencies for states as well. And it says that where you are also a resident of the state in which you are born. And so, whether there's an analog in the state constitution is something that we can certainly look into and get back to you, but the federal constitution is the one that ascribes the rules and requirements relative to citizenship at the federal level, but also says, again, you are a resident of the state in which you were born for purposes of citizenship as well.
Thank you very much, Assemblymember Jackson. Seeing no other questions, I want to thank you so much for your time and your presentation.
Thank you so much. Great to be here.
We're going to take a very brief recess. Okay, and we're back. Next, we have a presentation from the Office of the Secretary of State. With us to present is Nevada Secretary of State Francisco Aguilar. Please go ahead, whenever you're ready.
Good morning, Chair Considine and members of the committee. For the record, I'm Nevada Secretary of State Cisco Aguilar. It is a pleasure to be here today. I joined today by Chief Deputy Gabriel DeCara in Las Vegas and the executive staff in Carson City and Las Vegas. Today, we'll be giving you a brief overview of the Secretary of State's office. First, I just want to say that I'm very proud to be here with my executive team and the proud work that they have accomplished in the last 2 years. Our office has been focused on 3 main goals: innovation, modernization, and transparency to serve the state of Nevada. And those will continue to be our priorities. We won't get into the full scope of all the hard work of each of our divisions in the next 15 minutes, but if anyone is interested, we're happy to have further conversations and invite you to the office. Additionally, our biennial report is available online and goes into greater detail. So we'll begin with slide 1. I will be presenting alongside Chief Deputy DeCara in Las Vegas, and our deputies here today are available to answer any questions. First, we will walk you through an overview of our office, and then more details in each of the divisions. The Nevada Secretary of State's office informs Nevadans, empowers businesses, and is a trusted source of information that the state runs on every single day. We have approximately 150 full-time staff across several divisions, which include commercial recordings, the business licensing portal, elections, securities, document preparation, domestic partnerships, Nevada lockbox, notary, and operations. In the SOS office, we oversee 5 task forces: the Advisory Committee for Participatory Democracy and the Youth Advisory Task Force, the Election Integrity Task Force, the Keep Nevada Working Task Force, and the Task Force on Safe Sidewalk Vending. The Secretary of State office is also a member of boards and commissions, the Board of Examiners, the Board of Prison Commissioners, and the Governor's Office of Economic Development, GOED. The Commercial Recordings Division is overseen by Deputy Secretary of State Deanna Reynolds, and there are 49 full-time employees in the division. Deputy Reynolds also serves as the Project Orion program sponsor, which we'll talk through about shortly. Nearly 560,000 businesses file with the state's business licensing management system. And in 2024, these services generated over $200 million for the state general fund. The main duties of the division are the processing and filing of organizational and other business documents for entities, including for-profit and nonprofit corporations. Examples are listed on the slideshow. The division also reviews, files, and processes a number of licenses and registrations, including trademarks and uniform commercial code filings. The division is also responsible for issuing the annual state business license, all Title VII entities, as well as sole proprietorships and partnerships. The business licensing portal is managed by the Business Portal Administrator, Paul Difflow. He is also the program manager for Project Orion, our overhaul of the business portal, Silverflume. 96% of the department's workflow is managed online, directly by our constituents through Silverflume. Project Orion was launched after the 2023 legislative session to stabilize business services and improve the user experience. Through Project Orion, we resolved over 600 bugs in the Silverflume system. Silverflume was broken, bringing the system to a minimal viable product. Without these fixes, we'd have not been able to serve our customers and begin the complete replacement of the business licensing system. The vision for what comes next is eventually having a single one-stop shop for all business licensing needs, including local jurisdictions and cross-state agency filing requirements. We currently have a statewide business licensing working group developing a strategy for the best path forward. The Secretary of State also serves as the Chief Officer of Elections in Nevada. Mark Velashan oversees the Elections Division as our Deputy Secretary for Elections to support this role. He has 18 full-time state employees, along with 27 contractors dedicated to the VREM system. The statewide voter registration election management system implementation, which occurred prior to the presidential election in 24. The Secretary of State's office is responsible for the execution and enforcement of federal and state election laws. The main duties of the division include providing training to state and local election offices and overseeing implementation of new and state federal election laws, conducting elections-related tasks, including candidate filings and campaign finance reporting, and outreach and education of the 2.1 active registered voters in Nevada. The office collaborates closely with all 17 clerks and registers, as well as the 18 city clerks. This collaboration has been particularly important during the implementation of VREMS and getting the system live successfully ahead of the 2024 presidential election, enhancing the security of our election, and streamlining the voter experience. We're already ahead, working hard to prepare for the 2026 election cycle. We'll move on to securities. Aaron Houston is the Deputy Secretary for Securities Division and oversees 21 full-time state employees. The Securities Division registers and licenses more than 10,000 broker-dealer sales representatives and 150 Nevada-based investment advisors. They also manage securities registrations and exemptions filed for sale in the state of Nevada. in the last 2 years. Deputy Secretary for Southern Nevada, Ruben Rodriguez, oversees the notary, document preparation, domestic partnerships, and Nevada lockbox programs. Each program is managed by a small team of individuals, and they work hard, located mostly in Las Vegas. The duties of these programs include the employment and registration of notaries public and document preparers, and ensuring compliance to protect consumers, providing legal recognition and filings for domestic partnerships, administering Nevada Lockbox, a free service that gives Nevadans a secure way to register advance directives and nominate guardians should those documents become necessary. We also implemented the use of blockchain within our domestic partnership program to ensure the security of critical documents. This laid the groundwork for us to be the first state in the nation to utilize blockchain in the certification of the 2024 presidential election. Operations. Deputy Secretary for Operations, Debbie Bowman, oversees the management of our internal office and systems, including IT, accounting, facilities, and HR. The IT team has assisted with the modernization projects over the last 2 years. They're a small but mighty team. Project Orion for commercial recordings, VREMs and elections, as well as managing the office moves in both Las Vegas and Carson, all while continuing to meet the technology needs of the agency and keeping our data secure. The accounting team has been hard at work creating our budget. I look forward to sharing that budget with the legislature next week. This team also tracks and processes our office's revenues, which is important, processes payments and invoices, and oversees allocations of federal grant funds. The operations team acts as a liaison between leasing services as our office grows. They're also responsible for developing emergency action plans. The team, most importantly, oversees employee relations within the office, offering training opportunities and the administration of payroll, compensation, and benefits. Again, this is a brief overview of the work this agency does every single day, but we wanted to be respectful of your time and look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Our first question is from Assemblymember De Silva.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Secretary, and Mr. Ruben Rodriguez, my tocayo. All that word means is that we have the same first name. So my question really is, again, in line with the question that I asked the Attorney General, and that's, again, with the document preparers and, some of the issues that we have around that entire field. There's a lot of folks who are working without licenses, without proper accreditation, representing, immigrant communities, veterans, seniors, folks who are, more marginalized and don't really have the opportunity to really get counsel or sometimes, fight back if they've been done wrong. So again, I was wondering if you give us, I know you did mention it in the presentation, but give us more of an overview as to what's the situation with the document preparers, what are they, why are they important, why are we having this conversation? And then also secondly, aside from the sort of reforms that you're asking for in AB 72, what are some of the other things that you would want us to know about when it comes to this specific field? Thank you so much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for your question, Assemblyman. I think it's important to understand that notaries and document preparers go in hand, and we need to ensure that we are understanding what the consumer needs are and the consumer market. However, we have to make sure that we remain within our lane and within the law, especially when it comes to the transaction of business. Especially when you talk about notaries. Notaries in the United States are very different from what notarios are in Mexico. And when somebody comes to our community, they get sometimes confused about what that meaning is. And I think when you look at notarios, that is a member of the bar or a person here who is a licensed attorney. And notaries sometimes may misrepresent the ability to conduct transactions or do business, but also too, it's making sure that notarios are not existing in the United States. Those are attorneys that are licensed by the bar, but also too, we do have document preparers, which will assist individuals with the preparation of documents should they not be able to afford an attorney. And so we need to make sure that when an individual is doing work, that they are understanding what the consumer is expecting and giving what the consumer expects and holding them accountable if they decide to step outside the law. But I will let Deputy Rodriguez go through more detail on those issues.
Thank you, Assemblyman Silva. Just to elaborate on what the Secretary
Sorry,
was
please
mentioning.
state your name for the record.
Apologies. For the record, Ruben Rodriguez, Deputy Secretary of State for Southern Nevada. Again, thank you again, Assemblyman De Silva. To elaborate on what the Secretary was talking about additionally, we do have a compliance team that I'll discuss a little bit more further in the next presentation. We do allow for audit to take place. If there's any consumers that have a complaint or issues with a document preparer or notary, we do have the authority to do an audit in person. We check journals. We can open an investigation. We work hand in hand with the Attorney General's office every single day for any issues that may arise. NRS does provide us the legal capacity to enforce those laws. So we're actively, constantly engaged in the community. We've been doing community events as well to inform the community of what exactly is a notary, what is a document preparer, and as the Secretary was saying, what is the difference from a notario? And I think the misunderstanding is, as the Secretary is mentioning, is that the notario in other countries do have that legal background. So we want to be very intentional how we're reaching out to the community, informing them. I think one of the main goals for our office is doing outreach. It's also our responsibility to inform the community of the resources and information that our office is able to provide and what we're able to do and what we cannot do. But we're constantly looking for avenues to put that information out there to ensure that all Nevadans are protected and within compliance in NRS.
Cisco Aguilar, Secretary of State. Just to let you know, too, one of our most seasoned Secretary of State members is on the compliance side for the document preparers, and she's pretty passionate about this issue, and the fact that we have her engaged on a daily basis doing the consumer education, working with document preparers to make them stronger in the businesses that they have is a real asset to her. So I do appreciate the work that Irene does in our office.
Gabriel DeCara, for the record, if I could.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Gabriel DeCara, Chief Deputy Secretary of State. You know, something that the Secretary and Deputy Rodriguez just talked about that I think is really important was when we came into office, there was a single small compliance team that handled commercial recordings, civil complaints, notary civil complaints, and election civil complaints. And the volume of all of those was very large. The Secretary came to the legislature last session, asked for additional investigators for the elections division, which the legislature very kindly gave us. And we were able to rearrange some of those duties. So now there's a dedicated compliance team that works on notaries and document preparers, a dedicated team that works on elections, and a dedicated team that works on commercial recordings. And that has done a lot to really help us be more proactive in those investigations, as Deputy Rodriguez said, stepping up community outreach, because it's a priority for all of us. So we're doing what we can to move existing resources around to better serve our public. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the question and that response. Our next question is from Assemblymember Gurr.
Appreciate it, Chairman, and I appreciate the presentation. Part of my question just got answered about the Election Compliance Division. But I think the question I've got is, what do they investigate? What complaints have you had about elections? And it's particularly about people who file for election and run and then don't file any of their C&Es and all the other stuff behind it, all the paperwork they need to after they've filed and messed up somebody else's campaign.
Thank you, Assemblyman Cisco Aguilar, Secretary of State. That's a great question. You know, we've had this when I came into the office, there were election integrity violation reports that were filed with the office, but they didn't have the resources to go through those reports and respond to the individuals that filed them. We now respond to those reports, we investigate those reports, and when we find a violation of law, they're referred to the Attorney General's office for prosecution. What we are finding is, as we go deeper into this compliance piece, campaign finance is a big issue, and we need to get deeper into it. We are getting there now. We first had to handle the 2024 election with that team, get them trained, get them ready to go, get them to be responsive to every single EIVR that was filed with our office. Now it's going into the second step and saying, okay, now that the election is over, And I think you've seen some of that discussion in the press now about campaign finance reports. And what are we needing to do to ensure we hold people accountable for when they do decide to run for office and then fail to follow through on the remaining reports? One, again, it goes into candidate education first, because we do have some good-hearted individuals in our communities that are running for office and just don't understand the process. However, if you're gonna run for office, you better make sure you understand the law. And we need to start to hold people accountable for those violations. You know, we do have fines that are assessed to individuals and PACs that don't file the necessary complaint. However, the process to collect on some of those fines and I guess accountability measures is difficult because, and we're bringing, you know, a solution to you to consider in the future as the legislature.
Thank you. Secretary, that answers a lot of my question. And as we go forth, I know there's been a complaint filed that I could talk to you offline about and maybe get a follow-up on it.
Assemblyman, thank you. Cisco Aguilar, Secretary of State. Absolutely. We always want to hear from citizens throughout the state about issues that are outstanding. Obviously, we went through a very competitive election. We're digging ourselves out of the hole. We're excited to be coming out of the hole and seeing the sunlight. But again, it's where can we do better as an office to make sure that we are being, one of my main goals, I said, was modernization, innovation, and transparency. And this falls directly under the transparency priority.
The question, Assemblymember Gur. Our next question is from Assemblymember Flanagan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning. You mentioned task forces and committees, and there are several different task forces. I just want to get a better understanding of what they do, what their role is, and how you use them.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Assemblywoman, for the question. Cisco Aguilar, Secretary of State. The 5 task forces I mentioned were the Advisory Committee for Participatory Democracy. That is required by statute that I engage across range of Nevadans as we go through the election process. We talk about education initiatives, we talk about education plans for the community, but also too, what can we do as an office that better serves Nevadans across state? And when I say Nevadans, I mean all Nevadans. We also, under that task force, created the Youth Advisory Task Force. We had in Nevada, and we should be proud of this, is the second highest turnout among youth voters in the country. Michigan beat us, but we will get them in 26 or 28. And that's just engaging with our youth because they have experienced the world differently. They look at things differently. They may not understand the civic responsibility to cast their vote. They may not understand when they get a paper ballot in their hand and say, what is this? Because their entire lives, they have been digital natives. They understand how to live their lives from a digital perspective. You know, we saw an issue with signatures during the signature process of the 24 election because most young people don't have a signature. And it's not their fault. It's just they haven't needed to have a paper to pen signature. So understanding those issues. Also, too, I'm an old guy and figuring out how do we communicate to our youth in a way that they understand and start to trust the Secretary of State's office, but understand what state government does for them, and learning their means of communication was super helpful. They were a great group of young people, cross sections of the entire state, you know, from all different perspectives, and they continue to want to engage and they continue to want to work, and I'm grateful for that engagement. The Election Integrity Task Force is a statewide task force made up of law enforcement and individuals who are working with us to give us information so we can make stronger decisions, but also to, at the end of the day, protect the integrity of the election. We have the FBI, we have Washoe County Sheriff's Office, we have Clark County Sheriff's Office, we have everybody you can think of from a law enforcement perspective. They're helping us. They were present in our office on election day because anything that arises, we need to handle in a quick and responsive way. Keep Nevada Working Task Force. Ruben actually chaired that, and I'll allow him to speak about that a little bit.
Ruben Rodriguez for the record. Thank you, Secretary. The Keep Nevada Working Task Force is a task force that was designed to help immigrants better transition into the workforce. So what these task force comprise of law enforcement, educators, labor folks, and what the task force allows us to do is have an environment where we can get additional information from outside parties, whether that's legislation from other states, how they've been able to implement some policies that are more effective, and to compile a report that's provided to the legislature per NRS to give us a better understanding of how we can better help Nevadans, especially our immigrant community. I think when we're able to have these task force, we're able to look at every single perspective because we have multiple different stakeholders on these committees. And having that conversation in the panel allows us to get a better understanding of where the gaps may lie. We have some amazing legislators here in the state of Nevada. However, in the short period of time that we're legislating, there may be some gaps within some legislation that some of these task forces are able to look at more thoroughly and from an educational standpoint as well, and provide a very thorough report for how we can move forward with some of those policies.
Cisco Aguilar, Secretary of State. I'll go into the task force on safe sidewalk vending. We dealt with this last legislative session. Again, I like to say, like, sidewalk vendors are part of a culture, they're part of a community. And I know not every culture and every community understands what goes behind a sidewalk vendor. However, these are, in my opinion, the truest form of entrepreneurship. These are individuals who are looking to generate a revenue because their goal is just not to be a sidewalk vendor. What they want to do is build a business that is sustainable to get into a truck and then to get into a permanent restaurant where they're providing for their families. And when you talk about entrepreneurship, they're taking every resource that they have, every single dollar they have, which may not be a lot to us, it's everything to them to invest in these vendor type opportunities. And so we need to understand and balance between the health and safety of our citizens, but also too with the entrepreneurship. And so we worked really hard to bring everybody to the table to talk about where we want to go forward, how we work with the counties, how we work with the health districts, but also too how we maintain a person's ability to earn a dollar. So, and that report also came out.
Thank you, Chair. Just like the AG office, thank you for being accessible. I definitely get your report reminders of file your report. So we get your emails. Thank you for that. I'm not personally aware of this, but what are your efforts for non-English speakers, particularly the Latinx population, with their ballots so they can understand it?
Thank you, Cisco Aguilar, Secretary of State. Language access has been a big priority in our office. We have making sure certain counties are required by statute to provide the ballot in Spanish. I think Carson City is on the verge of meeting that expectation, that qualification. So they'll be the next county to look at when we talk about our Latino community and the languages that our communities speak. So we are aggressively on that issue. Actually, within some of our project implementations, we have brought language access experts in to help us design the systems before they actually go for translation, because we need to engage our communities, especially our diverse communities, especially when it comes to business too. A lot of our new filings for new businesses are coming from our Latino community. They're entrepreneurial, they want to be engaged, they want to make a dollar, but it's also that goes into the elections as well. And we are cognizant of everything we're doing. Every piece of mail that we sent out across the state was in both English and Spanish, or the language that was required to be met by statute.
Thank you. Our next question is from Assemblymember Gallant.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning. How are you? First of all, I have to give your office, and particularly Gabriel, so much gratitude with how available and even taking the time to explain election process. I mean, I learned a lot, so I appreciate that. But the misunderstandings continue to, right? And just this weekend, I was speaking to a group of ladies, and so I wanted to give you an opportunity to maybe set the record straight on a couple things. So one, about the signature cards, they were convinced that it was providing a pathway to get 2 ballots, which I didn't know enough about the process, but I'm sure that's not the case. So I was hoping that you could opine on that. And then also about cleaning up the voter rolls as well. So if you wouldn't mind taking the time now to educate all of us, I would appreciate that.
Thank you, Assemblywoman. Cisco Aguilar, Secretary of State. Thank you also to the Assemblywoman giving us, our office, an opportunity to have a platform to educate people about the election. So thank you for those opportunities, and thank you for continuing to engage with us. We're happy to engage with everybody, because the more people become educated about the process, the more we can get all Nevadans understanding that our elections are safe and secure, that Nevada can be proud of what they've done from an elections perspective. And that becomes from the work of all of you and understanding what we're trying to accomplish as a state. Signature cards was something we did this election cycle because we assigned voters a new identification number because of the implementation of the voter registration election management system. We are now on a statewide single system. So with that, we had to make sure there were no duplicate numbers from county to county. And by state law, when you assign a voter a new identification number, you have to send them notification of that number. And so we thought we'd use this opportunity and send them the card and ask them to also update their information. As you know, Nevadans are very transient. They move around, and we want to make sure that the voter rolls are as clean as possible. And we felt that a way to do that was not only use the notification card, but also use that card to allow voters to give us their responses and update their information in real time, but do it in an efficient way. You know, it wasn't mandatory, it was voluntary, but also too, it's educating people about their voter profile, that they can go onto the system, look up their information, provide an updated address so that we're ensuring mail ballots are getting to the intended voter. And that voter is the single only ballot they're going to receive through the election process. And so it was a double thing. One, it was making sure we followed state law, but it was also two, we're using the opportunity to get most updated information from the voter, which also leads to us having cleaner voter rolls. We all want clean voter rolls. We want to ensure that every single ballot is getting to the intended voter, and that voter is getting what they need to participate in the elections process. Voter rolls have been a conversation. That's why I'm very excited about the VRAM system, voter registration election management system, because it brings us into one single database for the entire state. Prior to the implementation of this system, we had 17 different systems in 17 different counties. Some of those systems were no longer being supported by the vendor, which made them vulnerable for security risks. And now that we're on a single system, we can look at that voter database, we can look at the voter rolls and say, where are there duplicates across the state? Has somebody moved from Clark to Nye, or has somebody moved from Nye to Carson or Carson to Washoe? We can track that voter, we can update their information and make sure that they're registered in the single county where they belong and where they live and where they reside. So we are focused on voter registration. We are focused on maintaining the voter rolls. We are working with the county clerks every day. They're actually going through the process, or about to complete the process of their first round of voter maintenance in the voter rolls. And so we're really excited about where we're going. We know that we continually can get better, and we're working every day to ensure that we are doing what we need to do. So, thank you.
So I just want to make sure I heard this right. Everybody got updated numbers across the entire state of Nevada. That's all under one system. So that's why there might have been a new number, correct? But then the old number was retired.
Yes, it was also maintained a little bit just to make sure that we were secure, because what we found is there were some counties that had duplicate numbers with other counties, and we need to ensure that when it goes into a single state system, there was only one registration number for every single voter in the state of Nevada.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question is from Assembly Member Goulding, and please state your name before you answer.
Thank you, Chair. Two issues that you mentioned in your presentation that I'd love to get you to elaborate on a little bit. You mentioned that we're the only state that used blockchain in election reporting. So that's one. I'd love to learn a little bit more about that. And you also mentioned the lockbox program. Don't need to go into great depth, but could you elaborate on that a little bit? Thank you.
Thank you, Assemblywoman Cisco Aguilar, Secretary of State. First, blockchain. Again, I'm going to go back to our three priorities. It's modernization, innovation, and transparency, and making sure that we're doing what we need to do for Nevadans. Blockchain is a new technology that allows us to better serve Nevadans when they want to be served. So we implemented blockchain in the domestic partnership opportunity. So anytime anybody needs access to that document, whether it's a financial service provider, somebody's trying to apply for a mortgage, the individual who's taking that application can go to our secure website, put in the key for that document, and see that that document is valid, which then makes the person that's doing the transaction more comfortable. When the federal law passed about the elections and electors and verifying that we had lawful electors, one of the things they required of the states was to find an alternative submission for validation. So we, as traditionally in the past, we submit our federal election results to the National Archives, and we do that in a paper process. Now we have to do a secondary verification and submission to the National Archives. Some people chose to use different methods. I thought, why not? Let's use blockchain. And so we submitted blockchain opportunity. And anybody across the country can get that key or that code and go onto the blockchain and see that is an official document that was submitted, and it is the actual real document authorized by our office.
And the lockbox program?
Thank you. Cisco Aguilar, Secretary of State. You want to answer that question, please?
Ruben Rodriguez, Deputy Secretary of State, for the record. The Nevada Lockbox was created by NRS to allow Nevadans to store their documents, whether that's a will, trust, advance directive is usually the route that most individuals file for Lockbox. It's completely free service that we offer in our office. And the best part about the Lockbox, it allows for folks to store their documents safely within the Secretary of State's office. If there's ever a fire or emergency where they lose their documentation, they can always rely on the Secretary of State's office having those documentations. As well as for the advanced directives, we work with hospitals and emergency rooms as well. If you have an advanced directive that's within the lockbox, those hospitals and ERs can access that as well. So if you have, some last wishes and how you would like to proceed forward, all that information is available to them free of charge. It's one of the services that we provide to everybody. We're looking at ways to expand it, but it's one of those services that is unbelievably valuable, especially to our senior community and other residents as well.
Thank you both.
Thank you. Our next question is from Assemblymember Kasama.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Secretary, for your presentation. I was just curious, under your presentation for the Securities Division, where you had criminal investigations resulting in 16 convictions, were those for people that were unlicensed practicing in the state? I was just kind of curious, what were those type convictions?
Thank you, Assemblywoman Cisco Aguilar, Secretary of State. Is Erin in Las Vegas? Oh, she is at the table. Erin is the Deputy Secretary for Securities. But broadly, it's a variety of issues, but Erin can get into those in more detail.
Excuse me, Erin Houston for the record. Assembly member, thank you for the question. I would actually say that's a pretty equal mix of election convictions, so for double votes, and then the others were for securities fraud, yes, so people who were misrepresenting the reason or the use of the monies that they were collecting from investors.
Madam Chair, can I ask a question of Erin? Erin, is there any way you can break down the 16?
I can. I don't have the exact number in front of me right now, but off the top of my head, I believe that we had almost exactly split 8 and 8. So we do have a lot of election investigations that take up a lot of our investigatory efforts, which is fascinating and helpful. Those cases are usually election referrals from our elections division that involve an attempted double vote or a completed double vote. Most are attempted double votes where the second vote was not completed. And then the other 8 were traditional referrals from we collect from the community, or sometimes information that we get from other state agencies or from other states across the country that we investigate and then refer to our Attorney General's office for prosecution. And I can get the exact numbers to you after this meeting.
Cisco Aguilar, Secretary of State. Thank you, Erin. I think what is important to know too is our team is ready to go. We want to hold people accountable, especially when it comes to securities fraud, because what it does, it impacts our senior community more than anything, especially when our senior community has worked for decades to secure the nest egg that they have to live the life that they're living. And when somebody takes advantage of them and takes away that nest egg, it really puts them into a panic. However, individuals are afraid to come forward to report those crimes because they are embarrassed. We need to take that away. We need to take that stigma away. We are presenting a solution to that issue by creating a victims restitution fund to be able to allow people who have been victims of fraud to come forward, give us the information, because the quicker we can take somebody off the streets, the better off our community is going to be. And so it breaks my heart every time I hear some of these issues, and especially when it comes to males. When you talk about cryptocurrency and you talk about pig butchering, these are individual young males who are being taken advantage on social media accounts. They're giving these resources to individuals and they're losing everything they have. And so we need to ensure that we are protecting Nevadans in this area, in this space. So thank you.
That question and response. Our last question is from Vice Chair Nguyen.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you. Just want to start by saying that I really appreciate your office and your team for always be accessible. I think that is truly a testament to your hard work and effort ever since you come into office. My question, just want to bring us back to another topic that is very important to me, and I've been asking that throughout the session, so you may not be surprised on this. Currently, does your office or your team keep track of data in terms of small business or even any business in the state in terms of whether they are women's owned, veterans owned, minority owned? I think those statistics would be helpful in terms of allocating resources to help those demographics. So hopefully that I know there's a lot on your plate, but let's see if there is something that we can do to bring that forward.
Thank you, Assemblyman. Cisco Aguilar, Secretary of State, you are speaking to something we want to accomplish so bad. We get so many requests from other state agencies, from economic development organizations across the state about the demographics of our businesses. You know, the system, Silver Flume, which kills me to say because it has so many pains, it has struggles to exist. But we're going to get to we are in a place of replacing that system. And with the new system, we are looking to put in some of this better demographic information so we understand who our businesses are, where they are, what industries they're serving. And so this is the appropriate time to have that conversation as we're building the new system. So thank you for your interest. And thank you to the commitment for our office. I know you engage with us regularly. We love having you, but we always want to strive to do better because we know everybody depends on us, and if government can get out of their way and allow people to go do what they do best, we'll all be better off. So thank you for your commitment, thank you for your investment in our office, and thank you for your support.
Much for that presentation and all of the question and answer time. Now we will open the hearing for Assembly Bill 72, which revises provisions relating to notaries, public, and document preparation services. This bill was submitted on behalf of the Office of the Secretary of State, so thank you for staying to present, and please go ahead whenever you're ready.
Well, good morning. Good morning again, Chair Considine and members of the committee. For the record, I'm Cisco Aguilar, Secretary of State. Deputy Secretary of State of Southern Nevada, Ruben Rodriguez, will be joining me for this presentation. Modernizing the technology behind our document preparation and notary programs to better serve Nevadans. And this bill is our effort to modernize the law, clear up any confusion, and ensure that we have mechanisms to hold service providers accountable and protect Nevadans. Now, I will let Deputy Rodriguez walk you through the programs and our bill amendments, and we'll be happy to answer any questions after.
Ruben Rodriguez for the record, Deputy Secretary of State for Southern Nevada. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Thank you, committee. I'd like to give you a brief overview of notary and document preparation programs on the slides, alongside other special programs mentioned in the previous presentation. First, let me give you a quick overview of each program. The Notary Division operates under the authority of Nevada Revised Statutes NRS Chapter 240, which outlines the responsibilities and regulations of notarial acts within the state. The division's mandate includes commissioning notaries, overseeing their compliance with state laws, and providing training and resources to ensure the integrity of notarial acts. Recent updates to NRS 240 includes provisions to strengthen compliance requirements and expanding the use of electronic notaries, or e-notaries, reflecting Nevada's commitment to modernizing the notarial services we provide. The division also is responsible for providing authentication of notary signatures, known as apostilles and certifications, we typically use to authenticate documents to be presented in foreign countries. Apostilles and certifications are issued in accordance with the Hague Convention and can be only used and issued by the Secretary of State's office, and a division issued over 25,000 apostilles and certifications. The Document Preparation Services Division continues to experience growth, robust support for registrants across Nevada, established under NRS 240A. The program was created to regulate document preparation services and protect consumers from fraudulent and unethical practices. It ensures that individuals and businesses providing these services meet state standards and operate with transparency and accountability. The division supports Nevadans by enabling qualified registrants to assist consumers with preparing legal documents such as contracts, wills, and other forms without offering any legal services. This service is critical for residents who need accessible and affordable assistance with essential documentation. The requirements for registration to perform document preparation services took effect on March 1st of 2014. Since its inception, the program has undergone significant improvements and statutory changes. The 2019 legislative session adjusted the bonding requirements, reducing the bond from for a single person from $50,000 to $25,000, and establishing tiers for businesses based on the number of employees covered by the bond. Enrolled agents were exempted from registration requirements, and the obligation for annual filing season for completion holders was clarified into law. And seasonal peaks for active registrants occurring during tax preparation season, which is currently now, January through May. Let me move on to the next slide. And for this slide, I'd like to give you a brief overview. We kind of touched on it previously of our compliance team and our role overseeing notary and document preparation services. First, we ensure regulatory compliance by monitoring adherence to both state and federal notary laws and document preparation standards. Our team conducts regular audits and inspections to confirm that all processes align with legal guidelines. Second, we handle complaint investigations and resolutions. When concerns are raised about notary misconduct or document errors, we investigate these issues thoroughly, and when necessary, enforce disciplinary action. This process is vital by maintaining the integrity of our services that we provide. Third, we are committed to training and supports. We provide ongoing guidance and education to notaries and document preparers, ensuring that everyone involved is well-versed in industry best practices and legal requirements. This proactive approach helps prevent errors before they occur and ensures compliance within NRS state law. Finally, our efforts are aimed at maintaining public trust. By upholding high standards and transparency, as well as accountability, we work to safeguard the interests of the public and ensure that notary and document preparation services remain reliable and trustworthy. The additional slide next is doc prep registrants and renewals. The division has seen a notable rise in active registrants, closing fiscal year 2024 with 2,084 total active registrants compared to 1,865 for fiscal year 23. Over 80% of registrants are constantly renewing annually, reflecting strong program retention and trust among our users. From fiscal year 21 to fiscal year 24, active registrants grew by 39%, and certificates of renewal issued more than doubled, reflecting a strong program expansion and participant satisfaction. The next slide is an overview of our notary division. The graph illustrates a robust upward trend in demand for notary services over the last 5 periods, starting with 2020 with 24,457 active notaries. There was a slight dip to 24,106 in fiscal year 21 due to COVID, but that overall trajectory has quickly turned upward. By fiscal year 22, the number had increased to 25,717, and by 2023, it had reached 28,548. However, the most dramatic surge occurred in fiscal year 24, when the total number of active notaries jumped to 36,732 in the state. This consistent growth indicates a rising reliance on notary services, likely driven by increasing legal complexities, regulatory demands, and broader economic factors that necessitate more formalized document processes. The next slide, I'm going to go briefly an overview of some of the challenges we face and why we're presenting some amendments to AB 72. Our office faces significant challenges in overseeing document preparers due to increased complexity in documents, and multiple licenses are issued under various names, including family members. This makes it difficult to maintain accurate records of documents, receipts, and disclosures, leading to potential errors in bond coverage and risking consumer protection. Additionally, when a single bond business holds multiple licenses without holding multiple bonds, there's a chance that not all entities have the proper financial safeguards. Without individual bonds for each entity, consumers may be left vulnerable if errors occurred, fraud, or misconducts. These gaps underscore the need for clarification in the law to ensure every business operation is independently secured, ultimately protecting consumers and improving accountability. Now I'll give you a brief overview of some of the amendments within AB 72. The first one being requiring a separate bond for each business entity or sole proprietorship. The state ensures that every distinct operation providing document preparation services is financially secured. If any business mishandles funds or engages in misconduct, the bond for that specific entity can be used to compensate affected consumers. This targeted protection helps safeguard consumers and interests in every separate context. The second amendment is for notary publics, requiring the establishment of a code of professional responsibility and prescribing a form of affidavits. This represents a significant step toward modernizing and standardizing notarial practices in Nevada. These changes enhance ethical conduct, improve document consistency, and will ultimately provide stronger consumer protections and regulatory oversight. This in turn promotes a more reliable and trustworthy notarial system for all Nevadans. Third, the adjustment to the electronic notary public provisions transforms permissive language into clear prohibition, mandating that all electronic notary publics must be physically present in Nevada to perform an electronic notarial act via audio-video communication. This clarification enhances jurisdictional control, bolsters security, and reduces our fraud risk, all of which contribute to greater consumer protection and regulatory clarity in Nevada's notarial process. And lastly, under the previous version of the statute, use of the word may indicated that filing a cash or surety bond was optional. This allowed business entities some discretion in determining whether to secure a bond on behalf of employees performing document preparation services. By replacing may with shall, the amendment transforms the bond filing requirement from optional to mandatory. Every business entity with employees who perform document preparation services would now be required to file the appropriate bond with the Secretary of State's office, further ensuring the safety and security for Nevadans. Lastly, I'd like to just conclude giving you an overview of special programs, specifically notary and document preparation, the robust growth within both of those divisions, and the challenges we face, as well as some amendments to help continue our growth and reliability for consumers in Nevada. I'd like to thank you for the time and open it up to questions.
Thank you, Ruben Cisco-Aguilar, Secretary of State. I'd just like to add too, since this bill has been out, we've been in conversation with our business community and certain organizations to talk about some amendments. So we're working with them now on those amendments, and we'll bring those forward to you.
Thank you. Thank you for that presentation. We do have some questions. Our first question is from Vice Chair Nguyen.
Thank you, Chair, and again, thank you for bringing this bill to us. And I'm asking the question for many reasons, but one of them is I'm also a notary, as you may be aware, Mr. Secretary. In terms of the Section 5 of the amendment going into the Electronic Notarial Act, having it physically in the state, have we run into challenges with small business or other notaries presenting that as a challenge, as we are in this world of very complex travel schedules? Sometimes, we're running to California or to next door, or to other places for business. And we're still living in Nevada, right? We're still conducting business 99% of Nevada when we're in Nevada. There are off occasion where we are not. Are there outside of security issues of being a security issues? Are there any other issues for folks who do this frequently when they're not based in Nevada that we bring this change to?
Ruben Rodriguez, for the record, thank you very much for that question, Vice Chair. So we've come up with a few issues that have arisen with folks in California and other bordering states doing notarial acts via e-notary. We want to ensure that all e-notaries operate within Nevada to allow Nevada businesses to thrive. And we're open to amendments. I understand your question, whether or not you're able to conduct your business as a notary while you're traveling. And we're open to looking at those possibilities. These amendments are in a line to safeguard Nevada residents. We've worked through other e-notary platforms to provide us IP addresses to make sure that they're operating within the state. However, it does become a little complex when you're having to navigate IP addresses, and we have a very small compliance team, which we're looking to expand. So a lot of these provisions are to ensure Nevada residents are safeguarded and protected, especially when we're unable to safeguard them from outside actors or outside states, since we have no purview over what those states do. So we're open to looking to amendments, whether or not maybe looking at 95% of the businesses operate within the state with some wiggle room within there. But thank you for giving us that question. We're always open to making sure that businesses thrive within the state. Our job is two things: to help Nevada businesses succeed, but also safeguard Nevadans as well. And so they go hand in hand. So thank you very much for asking that question.
And so thank you for that. I really appreciate that perspective. I know that we always benchmark other states in terms of best practices. Are we benchmarking this as well, or are we going to be one of the pioneers in making this change?
Ruben Rodriguez, for the record. There has been some other states have done this, but we will be leading the way to doing this more within Nevada. We haven't looked at other states as a policy to do this. However, these are the challenges we uniquely face, that we are a transient state and we do neighbor, a few other states. So this is uniquely a Nevada issue. So this is something that we've kind of created ourselves.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Our next question is from Assemblymember Karras.
My question is again about the remote electronic notaries. If you could just explain to people that are not businesses how that would work for them.
Ruben Rodriguez, for the record. So anybody that is looking to get notary conducted, whether that's a document for your mortgage or for a will and trust, whatever the notarial act is, e-notary allows for the modernization that we currently live in. A lot of us conduct our business via phones or via laptops. And what e-notary allows us to do is have a safeguarded way to get those documents verified by a notary. So the notary's job is a few things. The first is to verify that the person in front of them is actually the person that they're signing these documents by verifying their identification or their passport. And so what e-notary allows folks to do is be able to conduct their business on that online platform at the same rate as most in-person notaries as well. This also allows for other notary business to expand their businesses to other parts of the state as well. So if you're based in Las Vegas, you can do business as an e-notary with any part, including our rural communities, which is a major issue as well. We're well aware that a lot of our rural communities like Goldfield or Tonopah may not have the notaries or the resources to get some of these documents signed. So we want to provide a modernized way for them to get these documents signed that limits any barriers that they may have.
Gabriel DeCara, for the record. Chief Deputy Secretary of State, I just wanted to add the reason behind this specific change in law relates to some lack of clarity in the existing NRS. Currently, the NRS says that an e-notary may perform a notarial act if they're located in the state. That leaves significant wiggle room in terms of interpretation. And so the change is the e-notary shall not perform the notarial act unless they're present in the state. So we believe that this meets the legislative intent of the original language, but gives our compliance team, Deputy Rodriguez's team, additional tools to make sure that the law is being followed. Although, as Deputy Rodriguez said, this was also written, this e-notary legislation was written pre everyone living on Zoom for a couple of years. So, we want to take, how business is conducted into Nevada into account before we, offer a final bill. Thank you.
I actually was not aware of remote notaries. I think it's fabulous. Let me ask you this. I know the notary needs to be within Nevada. Is this something that will work for our military community? If they're overseas, can they contact a notary here and have their business conducted?
Gabriel DeCara, for the record, the next little piece of that statute is that e-notary, shall be physically present in the state after the amendment, regardless of whether the person who placed the signature is physically located in another jurisdiction. So it does seem like, the goal is if you're notarizing something with Nevada, the notary should be here, although you don't necessarily have to be. Although, again, if we need to change that, to make that more clear, we're very open to doing so.
In addition, Cisco Aguilar, Secretary of State, in addition to notaries for military members overseas, apostilles are a big request of our office. And so we're also looking at how do we better serve our military members living overseas or Nevadans living in foreign countries through the apostille process.
Thank you so much for your presentation. Next, we will move on to testimony on the bill. Testimony can be provided in person in Carson City, via video conference in Las Vegas, or over the phone. Further instructions for providing testimony on a bill can be found on the agenda. Each person will have 2 minutes to provide testimony. Please keep your remarks to the point. And first, we will hear testimony in support of AB 72. Does anyone want to approach? Please go ahead when you're ready. Please state your name and spell.
These mics are new, so nice. Good morning, Madam Chair, Vice Chair. For the record, Chelsea Capurro here on behalf of Proof, CHELSEACAPURRO. Proof has been an active partner to all levels of government and works to advance policies that prioritize consumer safety, accessibility, and the future of digital commerce, and has been an improved online notarization platform in Nevada since 2018. And also, too, just to add on, I helped work on the piece of legislation that made e-notary legal in Nevada in 2017, and providing access and services to military families was a huge part of that. So very nice to hear those questions about that. Notaries are the original anti-fraud agents and are a legally required part of life's most important moments, from buying homes to executing estate plans. Because notaries are so essential, it's important to know that the individuals who are authorized to act as notaries have the proper education, training, and skills to be able to perform such important functions for the consumers and businesses they serve. AB 72 takes an important step toward making the notaries of Nevada even more reliable and professional than they already are, establishing a code of professional conduct, clarifying under what circumstances a notarization may not be performed, and empowering the Secretary of State to enforce these rules are all common sense improvements that will once more level up the performance of notaries and their services in Nevada.
Thank you. Anyone else in Carson City wanting to support AB 72? Okay, we'll move to Las Vegas. Is there anyone in Las Vegas to testify in support on AB 72? Seeing no one stepping forward, AVH, do we have anyone on the lines in support of AB 72?
To provide testimony in support for AB 72, please press star 9 to take your place in the queue. Again, if you wish to participate in support for AB 72, please press star 9.
Good morning, Chair and members of the hardworking committee. This is Star Martinez, and I'm representing the Nevada Disability Peer Action Coalition, and much appreciation to the SOS and the staff. We wholeheartedly support this bill. With people with disabilities, this would make it more accessible to everyone, especially those who are in rural areas. So thank you so much and make it a great day. Bye-bye.
My name is Shauna Brennan. I am the ADSD attorney for the rights of older persons, for the rights.
Caller, please press *6 to unmute. Caller with the last 3 digits 711, please go ahead.
My name is Shauna Brennan. I am the ADSD attorney for the rights of older persons and persons with disabilities pursuant to NRS 427A.1234, calling as both a Nevada resident and the advocacy rights attorney in support of AB 72. Unfortunately, we're seeing a rise of fraud and coercion against older persons and persons with disabilities. The notary provides an additional legitimacy to documents being executed by such individuals, including a deed of trust for real estate, a power of attorney, which must be notarized. It's very important that we add ethical standards of practice to protect our consumers. There is also a mechanism for competency certificate, which provides an additional level of protection. And I would recommend that the Secretary of State also review incorporating that existing law into their ethical standards. Thank you for this opportunity to support this measure. Have a great day.
Chair, we have no additional callers in support at this time.
Thank you, AVH. We will now move forward to testimony in opposition of AB 72. Do we have anyone in Carson that wants to provide testimony? Seeing no one, we'll move down to Las Vegas. Is anyone in Las Vegas prepared to provide testimony in opposition of AB 72? Seeing no one, we will return to AVH. Is there anyone on the line?
Chair, the public line is open and working. We have no callers for opposition at this time.
Thank you. We will now move forward to anyone who would like to testify neutral on this bill. Please go ahead when you're ready.
Good morning, Serena Kasama with Carrera, Nevada, testifying on behalf of the Nevada Land Title Association, or NLTA for short. We are just testifying neutral, but we are looking forward to continuing to work with the Secretary of State on this bill language. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in Carson City? Okay, moving down to Las Vegas. Is there anyone wishing to testify in neutral? And not seeing anyone, AVH, is there anyone willing to testify neutral on this bill?
Thank you, Chair. The public line is open and working. We have no callers for neutral at this time.
Thank you. Secretary of State Aguilar, did you want to make any last-minute statements? Okay. All right. Well, thank you. We look forward to getting any potential amendments, and I will close the hearing on AB 72. We will now move to public comment. As a reminder, members of the public can provide public comment in person or telephonically and may submit public comment up to 24 hours after the meeting. Instructions for providing public comment can be found on the agenda. To provide public comment telephonically, dial 888-475-4499. When prompted to provide the meeting ID, enter 820-8378-7204 and then press pound when prompted for a participant ID. Each person will have 2 minutes to provide testimony. You may also submit written public comment to the committee up to 24 hours after the hearing. Please remember to clearly state and spell your name for the record. Is there any public comment here in Carson City? Seeing no one stepping up. Las Vegas, is there any public comment? Seeing no one in Las Vegas, I'll move straight to AVH. Is there anyone on the phone line for public comment?
To provide public comment, please press *9 to take your place in the queue. Again, if you wish to provide public comment, please press *9.
Good morning, Chair and members of the Hardworking Committee. This is Dora Martinez, CRA-MARTINEZ with the Nevada Disability Peer Action Coalition. I just want to thank you guys and all the people that presented today, especially the Secretary of State. Kudos to Mr. Mark Blashen, whom is instrumental and made the NVEs accessible to all. And thank you to your former colleague, District 29, Leslie Cohen, who sponsored the bill that we wholeheartedly pushed as people with disability and those who are elderly. So thank you so much and have a great day.
Chair, we have no additional callers for public comment at this time.
Thank you very much. Okay, our next meeting will be Tuesday, February 18th at 8 a.m. in this room. And that concludes our meeting for today. The meeting is adjourned.